Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The war dog's teeth were already red when the fourth handler hit the concrete. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a blast. The training yard at Fort Blackridge had gone silent except for one sound, deep, savage growls ripping out of a massive Belgian Malinois named Razor. His muscles bunched and released like coiled wire. His hackles stood sharp as broken glass. The leash lay useless on the ground, snapped clean where a man's grip used to be. Two medics dragged a bleeding corporal away, boots scraping, his screams cut short when Razor lunged again and slammed into the chain fence. The steel rattled. Someone shouted, "Clear the yard." Another voice yelled, "Put him down." A rifle safety clicked off. Razor didn't flinch. 4 handlers. 4 trips to the ER. One dog that refused to be controlled. Then the gate creaked open. Everyone turned at once. She walked in slowly, hands empty, posture loose, like she was stepping into a church instead of a kill zone. Her name patch read Sergeant Maeve Calder, though the younger troops whispered it wrong. Asterisk the woman who washed out, asterisk the one who quit. Her uniform was older than most of the men watching. Sun faded. Sleeves rolled with habit, not style. A thin scar cut through her right eyebrow, pale against her skin. "Are you insane?" someone hissed. Maeve didn't answer. She kept her eyes on Razor. The dog snapped toward her, lips pulled back, saliva stringing from his jaws. His paws dug into the dirt, claws leaving half-moons in the ground. He smelled blood. Fear. Anger. It poured off the yard like heat. Maeve stopped 10 feet away. Every soldier held their breath. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't flinch. She didn't reach for a weapon. She spoke one word. Not loud. Not soft. Easy. Razor froze. It wasn't obedience. Not yet. It was confusion. His head tilted, ears twitching as if the sound had unlocked something buried deep. His growl dropped lower, vibrating in his chest instead of ripping outward. Maeve swallowed once. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she kept her breathing slow. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Just like before. Just like Afghanistan. Just like the last time she'd stood this close to a dog that didn't trust the world anymore. The rifle muzzle lowered an inch. Razor took one step forward. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Maeve knelt. A mistake, they thought. A fatal one. Her knees hit the dirt, staining her uniform. She placed her hands flat on her thighs, palms open. Vulnerable. Human. Razor's teeth hovered inches from her face. She leaned closer and whispered the command again, this time with something else braided into it. Grief. Authority. Memory. Easy. Razor's tail twitched. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a door creaked open. The growl stopped. The yard erupted into noise, shouts, disbelief, orders, but Maeve heard none of it. Her eyes stayed locked with Razor's, dark brown meeting amber, both carrying scars no one else could see. A colonel pushed through the crowd, face pale. "Sergeant, how do you know that command?" Maeve didn't look up. Because if she did, they'd see it. The truth she'd buried. The reason Razor was breaking handlers. The reason 4 men lay bleeding. And the reason she'd never planned to come back to this base again. Razor sat. And the past came roaring back. 3 years earlier, Razor didn't answer to anything at all. He was Dog 721 then. No name, no history anyone cared to remember. Just another Malinois shipped into Camp Virex, a scorched forward operating base carved into the Afghan highlands. The air there always tasted like metal and dust. Helicopters screamed overhead at dawn. At night, the mountains watched you like they were alive. Maeve Calder met him behind a wire fence under a sun that burned white. He was younger. Leaner. Still dangerous, but not broken yet. Most handlers avoided 721. He was labeled unstable. Quick to react. Too much drive. Not enough forgiveness. 2 men had already failed his evaluation. One left with stitches across his forearm. Another requested reassignment and never said the dog's number again. Maeve volunteered without hesitation. Not because she was fearless, but because she recognized the look in his eyes. That constant tension. That readiness to explode. The way pain lived just under the surface. She carried the same thing. Their first session was quiet. No shouting. No dominance games. Maeve sat on the dirt outside the kennel and waited while 721 paced like a caged storm. She let him smell her boots through the fence. Let him hear her breathe. When he snapped, she didn't punish him. She just stayed. Hours passed up. By sunset, he lay down. The trainers didn't clap. They didn't smile. One muttered, "Temporary." Maeve didn't care. She named him Razor that night, not for his teeth but for the way his focus cut through chaos. When she said it, softly, he looked at her like the word mattered. Their bond wasn't instant. It was earned inch by inch. Training days blurred into nights. Maeve learned Razor's tells, the way his ears twitched before an explosion, the subtle stiffening of his spine when something was wrong. Razor learned her heartbeat. Learned that when her voice dropped, danger was close. Learned one word above all others. Easy. She used it when helicopters thundered too close. When gunfire cracked in the distance. When explosions rolled through the valley like thunder from hell itself. Easy meant I'm here. It meant you're not alone. They deployed together 6 months later. Their first mission went wrong fast. An IED turned the lead Humvee into scrap metal. Smoke swallowed the road. Screams filled the comms. Maeve felt Razor tense at her side, vibrating with need and terror and purpose. She released him with a hand signal, and he vanished into the smoke like a bullet. He found the wounded before the medics could. Dragged a man twice his weight out of fire. Located a secondary device buried under trash and blood. When insurgents fired from the ridge, Razor charged without hesitation, drawing fire away from the pinned squad. He came back limping. Bleeding. Tail still high. They both survived that day. Not everyone did. After that, rumors followed them. The woman and the dog. Some said Maeve relied too much on Razor. Others said Razor wouldn't listen to anyone else. A captain once joked that the dog outranked half the platoon. Maeve laughed with them. But at night, alone in her bunk, she lay awake listening to Razor breathe and wondered what would happen if something took him from her. The answer came sooner than she expected. During a night raid near the Shakar Valley, everything fractured. Bad intel. A house that wasn't empty. Children screaming. Gunfire bouncing off mud walls. Maeve felt the moment before it happened. A tightening in the air like the world holding its breath. An explosion tore through the courtyard. Maeve was thrown back hard enough to steal her vision. When sound returned, it came as ringing and shouting in one sound that sliced through. Razor. Not barking. Crying. She crawled through debris, fingers numb, heart shattering with every inch. She found him pinned under collapsed stone, eyes wild, blood soaking into the dirt. She grabbed his face, pressed her forehead to his, and whispered the word she'd built their world on. Easy. He stopped thrashing. They evacuated him. They evacuated her. But something had changed. In Razor. And in Maeve. And the military would soon decide there was room for only one of them. Razor survived the blast. That alone made him a miracle. His ribs healed crooked. One rear paw never fully recovered, the limp subtle but permanent. Worse than the physical damage was what couldn't be scanned or stitched. Loud noises made his eyes go glassy. Sudden movement flipped a switch inside him. When startled, he didn't hesitate, he reacted. The evaluators called it loss of threshold control. Maeve called it trauma. She sat in the observation room while Razor ran drills behind reinforced glass. New handlers rotated through, one after another, all following the manual. Sharp commands. Firm corrections. No patience. No memory of what he'd been. Razor failed every time. He snapped at a handler who grabbed his harness too fast. Lunged when another raised his voice. The room filled with red markers on clipboards. A major finally turned to Maeve. He's compromised, Sergeant. Maeve stood. He saved 12 lives after being blown apart. He needs time. We don't have time. She argued. She pleaded. She offered to reset his training, start from zero, take any posting they wanted. She reminded them Razor responded to her. That she could still reach him. The board exchanged looks that felt colder than gunfire. You're too close, the colonel said. That's the problem. Maeve felt something crack in her chest. They removed Razor from her custody that afternoon. No ceremony. No goodbye. Just a leash passed from her hand to someone else's. Razor resisted, nails scraping the floor, eyes locked on hers as if she'd just betrayed him. Maeve broke protocol. She knelt in the hallway, pressed her forehead to his, and whispered the command one last time. Easy. He stilled. They called her emotional. Unfit. Compromised. 2 weeks later, Maeve was medically discharged. Asterisk non-combat stress reaction star. A clean phrase that hid everything messy and human. She signed the papers without reading them. She didn't fight. She didn't have anything left to fight with. The day she left Camp Virex, she looked back once. Razor wasn't there. Back in the States, civilian life wrapped around her like clothes that didn't fit. She worked nights at a shipping warehouse outside Red Mesa, Nevada, the desert stretching endless and empty beyond the loading docks. The silence was worse than the noise overseas. No rotor wash. No radio chatter. Just the echo of her own thoughts. She dreamed of Razor almost every night. Sometimes he was whole, running beside her through dust and sun. Other times he was trapped again, crying under stone while she screamed and couldn't reach him. She woke drenched in sweat, the word easy burned into her tongue. Months passed. Then years. Maeve stopped checking military forums. Stopped answering calls from old unit mates. She told herself Razor had been reassigned. That someone patient had learned his language. That he was working again doing what he was born to do. She told herself lies because the truth hurt too much. The call came on a Tuesday. An unfamiliar number. Government tone. Sergeant Calder, the voice said, "This is Fort Blackridge. We're requesting your presence for an urgent canine evaluation." Maeve almost hung up. "I'm out," she said. "You made that clear." There was a pause. Then quieter, "He's injured 4 handlers." Maeve's grip tightened. "What dog?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Razor." The warehouse lights hummed overhead. The desert wind rattled the bay doors. Maeve felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "They're talking about euthanasia," the voice added. Silence swallowed her. All the things she'd buried, anger, grief, guilt, surged back at once. They'd taken him from her. Broken the only bridge he trusted. Then acted surprised when he burned everything around him. "I'm not a miracle worker," Maeve said finally. "No," the colonel replied. "You're the only one he listens to." She drove through the night. By dawn, Fort Blackridge rose from the dust like a concrete scar. As she stepped onto the base, alarms echoed faintly from the training yard. Something had gone wrong. Again. Maeve started running. Fort Blackridge smelled wrong. Maeve noticed it the moment she crossed the gate, bleach layered over fear, metal over sweat. The kind of scent that came after accidents people didn't want to talk about. Soldiers moved faster than necessary, eyes darting, voices low. No one laughed. Razor was no longer a partner here. He was a problem. They kept him in an isolation run at the far end of the K9 compound. Reinforced steel. Triple locks. Warning placards slapped onto the fencing like afterthoughts. Aggressive. Do not approach. Authorized personnel only. Maeve stopped walking when she saw him. He stood at the back of the pen, body rigid, scars clear under the harsh lights. His eyes snapped to her instantly. No barking. No lunging. Just recognition so sharp it hurt. He remembered. The kennel master cleared his throat beside her. "He's been through 7 handlers in 18 months. Maeve didn't look away. "You mean he's been failed by 7 handlers?" The man sighed. "We tried soft. We tried hard. We tried medication." Medication. The word tasted bitter. They dulled his senses, then punished him for being slow. Then removed the meds and punished him for being reactive. Each reset stripped something away until all that remained was survival instinct. They walked past a cracked concrete wall. Dark stains still marked where blood had soaked in. Maeve's jaw tightened. "What happened here?" she asked. The kennel master hesitated. That was answer enough. "He doesn't sleep," the man said. "Not really. Any sudden sound and he's up, teeth first. Last handler went down when Razor reacted to a dropped food bowl." Maeve closed her eyes briefly. "You taught him the world was always about to explode," she thought. "And now you're angry that he believes you." They entered the control room. Through the glass, Razor paced, nails clicking in a steady, frantic rhythm. A young lieutenant watched nervously, hand hovering near a sedative injector. "Don't," Maeve said sharply. The lieutenant stiffened. "Ma'am?" "He's not charging," Maeve said. "He's looking for an exit." The lieutenant stared. "How do you?" Maeve turned to him. "Because that's what panic looks like before it turns violent." The colonel from the call stepped forward. His uniform was pristine. His eyes were tired. "We're out of options, Sergeant Calder." "You created the options you're standing in," Maeve replied. Silence stretched between them. Finally the colonel exhaled. "You get 1 session. No gear. No sedation. If he reacts, we end it." Maeve nodded. She removed her jacket, folded it neatly and set it aside. No armor. No leash. Just her and the dog they'd broken. When the gate buzzed open, Razor froze mid-step. His ears flattened. His muscles tensed. His body prepared for betrayal. Maeve entered slowly, heart pounding so loud she wondered if he could hear it. The pen felt smaller than she remembered. The air heavier. Every eye in the control room glued to her. Razor growled low. Maeve stopped. She didn't command. She didn't approach. She lowered herself onto the concrete and sat. The growl wavered. Maeve spoke softly, not to control him, but to remind him of who he'd been before pain rewrote his instincts. You were brave, she said. Even when you were scared. Razor's pacing slowed. You ran into fire for people you didn't know. His ears twitched. You trusted me. The growl died in his throat. Maeve finally whispered the word. Easy. Razor took a step toward her. The lieutenant's hand tightened on the injector. Razor took another step. Maeve held her breath. And then, outside the compound, a metal door slammed. The sound cracked like a gunshot. Razor exploded forward. Razor's charge shook the compound like an earthquake. Concrete cracked under the force of his claws. Soldiers dove aside, yelps of surprise blending with the dog's furious growls. Alarms blared, red lights strobing across the metal walls. The lieutenant froze, hand twitching toward the sedative injector, eyes wide as he realized they were outmatched. Maeve stayed low, heart hammering, but her mind sharpened. This wasn't aggression, it was fear unleashed, pain unbridled. Every muscle in Razor's body screamed distrust. He wasn't attacking the humans in front of him, he was punishing a world that had taken everything from him. Maeve didn't flinch. She let him vent, letting the storm pass over her, trusting the bond they'd forged in blood and dust. Razor, she shouted, voice slicing through chaos. Not a command, not a threat, just a word steeped in history, carrying memory and trust. His momentum faltered. The growl dropped into a low rumble, more warning than attack. The soldiers froze, unsure whether to panic or hope. Razor's amber eyes locked on hers, searching, questioning, recalling the quiet moments before the explosions, before the pain, before the betrayal. He skidded to a stop inches from her. The metal of the gate shimmered under the flashing lights. Sweat ran down Maeve's temple, dust caked her uniform. Every second stretched like hours. Then, almost imperceptibly, Razor exhaled. A tail wag flickered, tentative. The cage of fear around him cracked for the first time in months. Maeve reached forward slowly, hand trembling, and rested her palm against his flank. Razor leaned into it. The lieutenant exhaled, relief coating his voice like mud. I don't understand. How? Maeve didn't answer. She didn't need to. Razor had spoken for them both. One word had done what sedatives, threats, and broken protocols couldn't. One word had reminded him he was more than his pain, more than the failures they forced him to endure. Outside, the sun rose over Fort Blackridge, bleeding light into the dust and steel. The chaos still echoed in the yard, but in that moment, an impossible calm settled over the pair. Every eye watching recognized the truth. Some bonds aren't earned in obedience, they are forged in understanding. And Razor had finally remembered who he was meant to be. But even in that victory, Maeve felt the gnawing tension of what came next. The base would demand explanations. Military protocol would demand results. And somewhere in the shadows of authority, someone would still want him gone. She rose slowly, pulling Razor back toward the gate, knowing the storm was far from over, and that her fight was only beginning. Maeve didn't rest. Not yet. Razor was calm beside her, but the shadow of the compound's steel and the soldiers' suspicion pressed down like a weight. Every step they took through the training yard carried echoes of past failures. The handlers who had fallen, the walls that had witnessed chaos. Each echo reminded her why she was here. To prove that survival didn't always mean obedience, and that understanding could conquer fear where force failed. The colonel approached, expression unreadable. Sergeant Calder, we need a demonstration. Can he perform under stress? Maeve nodded. Stress was inevitable. It wasn't enough that he'd obeyed her once. He needed to show it consistently, against the chaos they imposed. They moved to the obstacle course, a labyrinth of metal beams, swinging tires, and scattered debris. Hazards littered the ground, simulating what a deployed team might encounter in hostile terrain. Soldiers made noise, shouted, even fired blanks. Razor's ears flicked, tail stiffened, but he stayed by her side. Maeve whispered, easy, and released him on a controlled run. Razor weaved through the tires with precision, scaled the beams, retrieved the simulated casualty without hesitation. Every movement was calculated, every glance toward Maeve a silent confirmation. The handlers watched, mouths agape, realizing that the dog they deemed uncontrollable was performing flawlessly, because he trusted one person completely. Still, not everyone believed. A lieutenant muttered, "He's too dependent, one slip and..." "Then he's not yours," Maeve cut in, eyes flashing. "He's mine. And he'll perform because I earned it, not because you demanded it." A crash came from the far end of the course. Razor froze, instincts flaring. A metal panel had fallen, scattering debris. Other dogs barked, handlers yelled. The chaos mirrored every nightmare Maeve remembered from Afghanistan. Razor's fur bristled. But instead of snapping, he waited. His gaze found Maeve, amber eyes wide, seeking permission. She extended her hand, steady as steel. "Easy." The world seemed to pause. Razor exhaled, then darted forward, navigating the obstacle with renewed purpose, dragging the fallen dummy back to her side. Silence fell over the yard. The colonel's jaw tightened. He wanted to question, to critique, but even he could not deny the undeniable. The bond between Maeve and Razor was unbreakable. As they returned to the holding pen, Maeve felt a spark of victory, but a shadow lingered. Protocol demanded paperwork, inspections, and endless questions. Someone would argue that this success was a fluke. That Razor couldn't be trusted in combat without her. She knew the truth. He could thrive only because she remembered every fear, every pain, every flash of memory that had shaped him. The world had tried to break him, but together they had turned that pain into power. And as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, casting long, sharp shadows over the yard, Maeve realized this was just the beginning. If she could survive the bureaucracy, the skepticism, and the ghosts of the past, maybe, just maybe, Razor could finally return to the field. Not as a weapon, not as a liability, but as the hero he was always meant to be. Night fell over Fort Blackridge like a velvet curtain, hiding the dust and scars of the day. Maeve sat on the edge of Razor's pen, flashlight in hand, illuminating the pattern of scars across his flank. Each mark told a story: missions gone wrong, trainers who had misjudged him, moments when survival had required every ounce of instinct. She traced them with a careful finger, whispering apologies she knew he could understand. Memories surged unbidden. The first blast in Afghanistan. The way his paws had pounded through debris to save their squad. The quiet nights under a star-splattered sky when he slept beside her, head on her lap, breathing heavy but steady. She'd left him once, and the guilt had burned like acid ever since. Now, seeing him tense at every shadow in the compound, she understood the depth of the damage inflicted, not just on his body but on his mind. A soft shuffle behind her made her turn. The colonel stood in the shadows, hands in his pockets. "You've done something I didn't think possible, Sergeant Calder. But the past has a way of catching up." Maeve didn't flinch. "He survived worse than this. You want him to fail? You want him dead?" The colonel shook his head. "No. But someone has raised a complaint. A civilian contractor witnessed your handling during the live exercise. They say you compromised protocol." Razor growled low, sensing tension. Maeve pressed her hand against his flank. "Easy," she whispered. The growl faded. The colonel sighed. "I won't lie. You've earned results. But this isn't about skill. It's about control. They'll question everything you've done." Maeve stood. "Control isn't force. It's understanding. Razor isn't a machine. He isn't a weapon. He's alive. And you keep treating him like a liability instead of a hero." The colonel studied her. Finally he nodded. "You've got one more test. After that, we'll see if the chain of command agrees with you, or ends this." Maeve's chest tightened. Another test. Another chance to prove to them, and to herself, that Razor was more than the sum of his scars. She whispered his name and his ears pricked. They had survived explosions, betrayal years apart. They would survive this. As they prepared for the next day's challenge, Maeve couldn't shake the faces of the 4 handlers who had ended up in the ER. She remembered their panic, their fear, their disbelief as Razor reacted to everything they did wrong. They hadn't understood him. They hadn't understood her. But tomorrow she would show them what true partnership looked like. Not obedience. Not dominance. Not control. Trust. And as the desert wind whipped through the compound, carrying with it the scent of dust and iron, Maeve whispered one more time to Razor. "Easy." Razor pressed his head against her leg. The shadows of the past were long, but tonight, for the first time in months, they felt manageable. Together they would face the judgment of the base. Together they would rise. Dawn broke over Fort Blackridge in sharp streaks of orange and gold, cutting through the steel and dust of the compound. Today wasn't a drill. Not officially. Today was a showdown, protocol versus instinct, authority versus trust. Soldiers lined the perimeter, cameras and radios capturing every movement. The colonel's expression was stone, unreadable, but his presence radiated weight. Maeve stood at the start of the obstacle course, Razor at her side. The dog's amber eyes glinted in the rising sun. They were both tense, muscles coiled, hearts synced like pistons. This was more than performance. This was survival. This was proving that years of trauma, failed handlers, and endless bureaucracy could be overcome by one unbreakable bond. The exercise began with chaos. Blanks fired, alarms blared, metal doors slammed unexpectedly, and volunteers threw simulated casualties into the path. Razor's ears flicked, his body pulsing with instinct. He froze briefly, eyes locking on Maeve. She whispered, "Easy." The growl that threatened to erupt died before it formed. Step by step, he navigated the hazards, moving with precision born of shared history. Each command, subtle and soft, guided him through danger with uncanny coordination. A sudden crash from the far end of the course, a swinging beam heavier than expected, sent nearby soldiers diving for cover. Razor hesitated for just a heartbeat. Maeve's hand extended, palm flat, voice steady. "Easy." Instantly, he surged forward, body low, weaving around the obstacle to retrieve a simulated casualty. He returned, tail high, eyes bright, exuding controlled power. Silence enveloped the yard. Every observer felt it, the undeniable truth that Razor was alive, whole, and unstoppable when led by the one who understood him. The colonel stepped forward, face taut. "Sergeant Calder, remarkable. I've never seen compliance like that." Maeve's gaze didn't waver. "It's not compliance. It's trust. You've made him fight humans for control, punish instinct, erase memory." "I didn't. I reminded him who he was." A murmur passed through the soldiers. Even the lieutenant who had doubted her earlier looked pale. Razor nudged Maeve's hand, seeking affirmation. The word easy hung between them, a lifeline, a promise, a memory, and a command all at once. Then came the unexpected. A simulated explosive, set off further down the course, thundered across the yard. All dogs would have panicked. All humans would have reacted with instinctive fear. Razor froze for a split second, gaze flicking to Maeve. She knelt slightly, eyes steady. "Easy." He surged forward, calculated and unflinching, guiding a volunteer to safety with unmatched precision. Hearts pounded. Cameras rolled. The tension was electric. They had not just survived, they had performed flawlessly under stress that would have broken lesser pairs. When it ended, the compound was silent except for heavy breathing and the distant clatter of spent cartridges. Razor sat by Maeve's side, calm, tail wagging slightly, the storm in his amber eyes replaced with clarity. Maeve exhaled, feeling a surge of both triumph and relief. She had faced every ghost of the past, the blasts, the failed handlers, the broken protocols, and had not just survived. They had conquered together. The colonel finally nodded, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "You've earned it. I've never seen a dog like this, or a handler like you." Maeve knelt, pressing her forehead to Razor's. "We're just getting started," she whispered. And for the first time in years, the war dog who had sent 4 handlers to the ER finally knew peace. The boardroom at Fort Blackridge felt colder than the desert at midnight. Rows of officers sat stiffly behind polished tables, clipboards and digital displays arranged like weapons of war. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead matched the tension in the air. Maeve Calder stood at the front, Razor at her side, both unflinching. This was the final hearing, her career, Razor's future, and the truth of their bond laid bare before the chain of command. The first speaker was a senior lieutenant, his tone sharp. "Sergeant Calder, 4 handlers required medical attention under your supervision. Your methods are unconventional. Can you explain?" Maeve didn't hesitate. "Razor isn't violent. He's scared. He's been broken by people who didn't understand him. I didn't train him to obey me blindly. I trained him to trust. And that trust saved lives, my life, and the lives of everyone under his protection." A murmur spread across the room. The colonel leaned forward. "Evidence?" Maeve nodded toward Razor. "He can demonstrate." Razor stepped forward, muscles taut, eyes burning with focus. A simulated threat was placed, a decoy human moving unpredictably. The officers braced for chaos, expecting lashing teeth and frantic aggression. But Razor moved fluidly, precisely, intercepting the target, guiding them safely without a single aggressive bite. The room exhaled collectively, disbelief and awe mingling. One officer stood. "But this is controlled, Sergeant. How would he perform in real combat?" Maeve met his gaze. "He's proven himself under stress, blasts, chaos, fear, pain. Every misstep you've labeled as failure was because the handlers didn't understand him. I do. And that understanding turns fear into strength. The tension broke when a video of previous missions was played. Razor in Afghanistan, dodging debris, saving wounded soldiers, performing beyond any manual's expectation. His amber eyes, full of trust and courage, locked with Maeve's in every clip. The officers saw what she always knew. He wasn't a weapon. He was a hero. The room held its breath. The colonel finally spoke, voice heavy with concession. Sergeant Calder, and Razor, your bond is undeniable. Protocol be damned. You've demonstrated control through trust, not fear. The board approves Razor's return to active duty, under your command. Maeve's chest tightened. Relief surged, but she didn't smile. There was too much weight behind the victory. 4 handlers injured. Years of separation. The scars that remained. She knelt beside Razor, pressing her forehead to his. We did it, she whispered. His tail thumped softly, amber eyes meeting hers with recognition. Outside, the sun cut through the morning haze, painting the base in gold. Soldiers stopped to watch as Maeve and Razor walked past, side by side, a silent testament to resilience and trust. The whispers followed them. The woman who tamed the untamable, the dog who refused to break. For Maeve, it wasn't just redemption for herself. It was redemption for Razor. The dog who had sent 4 handlers to the ER had finally found someone who could reach him. The dog who had once been feared as uncontrollable now moved with quiet power, a living testament to loyalty, courage, and the bond that could survive anything. As they disappeared down the dusty road toward the training grounds, the officers knew one thing. This was no ordinary handler, no ordinary dog. This was a partnership forged in fire, tested in blood, and proven unbreakable. And the world, for once, would have to respect it. The desert wind stirred dust across the open field outside Fort Blackridge, carrying the faint scent of sagebrush and dry earth. Maeve and Razor stood together, the morning sun casting long shadows behind them. No alarms. No drills. No skeptical eyes. Just the two of them, finally free from the chains of judgment and misunderstanding that had haunted them for years. Razor lay beside her, head on her boot, tail flicking lazily. His amber eyes, once sharp with fear and aggression, were now soft, steady. Maeve ran her hand across his flank, feeling the ridges of his scars. Each mark told a story, of survival, of betrayal, of fear, and now of triumph. She whispered the word that had carried them through everything. Easy. He lifted his head, eyes meeting hers, and exhaled as if the weight of the past had lifted from his shoulders. Maeve smiled, a slow, quiet thing because the battle wasn't just over for the military hierarchy or the protocols. It was over for them. The years of pain, separation, and doubt were behind them. They had survived everything that tried to break them and emerged stronger. Soldiers watched from a distance, some approaching cautiously, others simply observing. Whispers ran through the ranks. The dog that sent 4 handlers to the ER tamed by one woman. Maeve ignored them, focusing instead on Razor. She knew the world might never fully understand their bond, but that didn't matter. What mattered was trust, loyalty, and the quiet victories won in moments no one else could see. She clipped on his leash, not because he needed control but because it was habit, a symbol of partnership, of shared purpose. Together they walked toward the edge of the training field, sunlight painting the dust gold around them. Every step was calm, measured, alive. Every shadow passed without fear. They were home, not a building, not a base, but here in each other's presence, in the trust they had fought to earn. Maeve knelt, pressing her forehead to Razor's. We made it, she whispered. No more fights. No more chaos. Just us. He nuzzled her gently, a soft, tangible acknowledgement of their journey. And in that moment the past melted, leaving only the quiet, profound certainty of survival, resilience, and an unbreakable bond. The war dog that had once shattered handlers' confidence, that had been feared, misunderstood, and almost destroyed, now walked with pride and purpose beside the woman who understood him best. Their story, etched in scars and whispered commands, would live forever, not in reports, nor medals, nor commendations, but in the bond that neither time nor trauma could ever sever. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, full of possibilities. And as Maeve and Razor moved forward, side by side, the world seemed to pause, acknowledging a truth that no orders or protocols could ever erase. Courage, trust, and love, whether human or animal, could conquer even the most unforgiving battles.